welcome to an extended version of Take Two. I'm pleased today to be interviewing the CEO of Malèe Natural Science, Zeze Oriaikhi-Sao, at her London head office.
Yes.
I had the pleasure of meeting Zeze at the Lux African Luxury Conference, where she put on a memorable performance. Is that the right word? I think you represented yourself exceptionally well.
Thank you.
In a very challenging and a very thought-provoking panel.
Yeah.
And it caught my eye, and I said to myself, we must sit down and meet Zeze. I think her story is amazing, and without further ado, we'll get straight into it. So, Zeze, tell us a little bit about Malèe Natural Science, about yourself, and what brings you to London as well.
So I started Malèe Natural Science in 2009.
Yeah.
It's essentially a fragrance and body care brand that tells different stories and captures moments of, I guess, Wanderlust Africa, from scent, how we choose our ingredients. I started the business purely out of necessity or also probably having more time on my hands. So business started in the middle of the recession. And I couldn't there was no work. Everyone was sort of not hiring at all. And found that I sort of did a bit of Africa travel and realized that through the travel, there were so many gems and opportunities out there in terms of the world being able to interact with, I guess, Africa in a different way, or even just sort of African beauty, as it were, in terms of routines or products or ingredients. And growing up sort of grandma, grandpa, someone always brings a jar of something.
Yes.
And that jar works. And so it got to a point where, I thought, well, why doesn't the world know about this? And how do I, champion the cause to kind of bring Africa to the world, as it were, because very few people can afford a safari or a trip sort of, where you have a balmy night and you have the night flowers in the air. So I think for me, I wanted to be able to capture that part of my sort of love for the continent and share it with the world. So I think Malèe does that quite well. We supply a lot of 5-star hotels in sub-Saharan Africa. And also in the UK, which is our sort of new market venture. You can find us at Harvey Nichols, Look Fantastic, Hut Group, Mankind, Beauty Expert, Amazon Luxury. So next time you buy some batteries, you can stick Malèe in your cart. And yeah, essentially, I think, slowly but surely spreading that message further and further afield, and having the opportunity to work with amazing sort of retailers in a diverse field, and realizing that what's happening with, I guess, Korean beauty or K-beauty is something that African beauty can also do. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you started this in the midst of a recession.
Yeah.
Now that is, that's quite bold. And where were you located at that time? Were you in London at that time?
No, so I just moved from London to South Africa.
Right.
And essentially it was, I arrived in South Africa. I'd done sort of first stage, second stage interviews.
Yes.
Prior to leaving. I was in London prior to moving, and I'd done sort of first stage, second stage.
So there was a plan.
Yeah, 100%.
You didn't just decide to yourself. I fancy South Africa.
I wish there was a plan. And I was going into work, and this was me sort of arriving in the countries to sort of, do the final stages, meet people, see if you gel with the team, the standard stuff. I just finished business school, so I'd spent, a large chunk of my life studying. It was time to work and sort of start climbing the corporate ladder, as it were. And in 2009, being an entrepreneur, there was nothing cool about it. I remember it probably took me almost a year before I would tell my friends that this is what I did for a living. Right. Because everyone was either a lawyer or a banker, and working at a sort of either, top law firm or magic circle firm or a top bank.
Yes.
And that was the career aspiration. The career aspiration wasn't to sort of innovate or create something.
Did business school serve as a platform for you in your mind, was it I would like to own my own business someday, or was it I need the tools to get into industry? If that makes sense. So how did that? Where did the point kind of transition for you? Was the recession opened your eyes to new ideas, or were those already something that was a desire burning within you?
So I went into business school in 2007.
Right.
So the recession hadn't necessarily
Kicked in. It was
really
kind of
hit
late
yet.
08
Yeah.
that it really
So
started.
it hadn't kicked in yet. So my choice for going into sort of business school was twofold. I had sort of had a business with a family friend, and that didn't go very well. And I think from that process was the first time I ever realized that I had some, or believed that I had some skill in running a business. Now, as a kid, I would Xerox Fido Dido comics and sell them.
So okay. That was your lemonade on the Lord, right?
Yeah, but it was, and throughout university, how I paid for my sort of nights out and drinks and my petrol in my car or the insurance. I ran a mobile sort of nail or manicure and pedicure style business. So I've always sort of had a keen interest in the industry, and I've always sort of dabbled in being an entrepreneur. And everyone, the joke used to be, I like money, so and I'm not afraid to work hard for it. I created my business plan for Malèe in business school. I remember getting a C for it and marching up to the marketing professor's office.
What did you say?
I marched up and I was like, what is this?
You made a mistake.
You clearly didn't read my paper. And I remember
what was the response? What did he say?
He said to me that he didn't think that there was a place for a business like mine.
So this was based on his personal opinion.
Well, he was an ex-L'Oreal executive, so he should it was coming from a credible source. And I'd worked incredibly hard, and I think at the time I thought the concept was flawless. And he pretty much came back, and I marched his office, and his response was, but I don't think this is going to work. I don't think you've considered enough. I wasn't, again, I think my business wasn't considered viable, as it were.
Right.
Have
you touched base lately?
No. I'm sure that.
Should we call him out? No.
It's one of those things where at the time, we had a good relationship, so it was. And he was candid and open and honest with me, and felt like the industry just wasn't ready for something like that, and he didn't think I'd considered everything.
And moving from 2009 and birthing of the idea and the passion and the drive that many entrepreneurs feel when it comes to, I'm having my baby, my entrepreneurial baby, so to speak, we're going to grow, we're going to take this forward. What was that stage like? What was day one? Can you remember day one, your first Malèe day? I think for me, it didn't start off as this is me definitely birthing a business, or this is me birthing and this grand idea. I remember being on my bed with a friend who was visiting, at my house, and I was like, I can't be a housewife. Like, there has to be more to life than this. Right.
After 3 months of sort of being in the marketplace, as it were, looking for a job, and I'd settled down, and we had this whole conversation about, what are you going to do? And she was in between jobs, and, I said, I have this idea of, Malèe the brand, and I kind of wrote all these ideas and what I thought it needed to be and how it was going to evolve, and we needed a little bit of this, and, it was going to be an experience, and it was going to be all about ingredients, and we're going to be gender blind and color blind, and this brand was going to be aesthetics meets natural ingredients meets design meets story, and, I wrote all this down, and kind of ran with it. Knew nothing about the industry from a creating a brand perspective, but what I did know was I had time, a lot of it, because I didn't have a job, when you say you had time, you're saying that you weren't necessarily putting certain milestones in your way. It was that you had enough time to develop this idea, to develop this plan. I think for me it was fluid. It started off as just, I have time and here's an interest and I'm going to pursue it. And I think more and more as I pursued it, it became sort of almost an obsession, as it were.
Right.
Because for each time I heard the word no, or each time someone said it wasn't possible, or each time I didn't have the answer, it was insatiable. I needed to know. And so for me, I think it took me till, I think, I can give you moments where at that point was when I realized that, okay, potentially I had in January 6th or 7th 2010, I had a Marketplace Africa CNN interview air,
Right.
and I remember sort of having like a screening in my house, and even then it didn't feel like I was an entrepreneur.
Right.
I think.
Why is that? I mean, because were you selling product at that time?
I was. I was selling products out of my boot of my car.
Right.
I had a brown box and a PowerPoint presentation. My products were designed, but I had no other branding or any other, So I had a business. I had an office.
So, and this is so true for so many entrepreneurs, is that initial stage, sometimes entrepreneurs look for a magical feeling or a defining moment or something, but even faced with a interview at an international platform network as CNN, you still didn't feel at that time that
I think
as an entrepreneur.
I feel like the buzzword now entrepreneur exists. At the time it wasn't
It was
a
still
buzz.
forming. There wasn't Gary V's and everyone flying around the planet and doing these huge shows and conferences and so like that.
At the time I was just a girl who had a brand and a story, and I was passionate about that story and the brand and growing my business. I even now I think sometimes I'm sort of more and more comfortable with the idea of referring to myself in that way.
Yes.
But consistently, in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, I would say up until about 2 years ago, I was very comfortable in just being, I own this brand, and, we retailed here and we stocked here, and this is what I did. And we work with, I guess, leaders in hospitality or retailers across the globe. Working with an amazing Danish retailer, Room 4, or working with Harvey Nichols, or working with the Singita Group, or pitching to really large hotel groups. I didn't wake up and think, I'm an entrepreneur today. I think, the evolution for me was, I went through the process of calling the Cosmetic Science Society and then creating products and then evolving that into having to sell the products.
Yes.
And I think the first time I realized that perhaps maybe I had a voice that people could potentially care about was there was a conference called the Southern African Luxury Association.
Yes.
And that was my first real ever speaking gig. And they had sent me an email and said they would love for me to come and tell my story. I didn't think I had a story. I thought there was very many people like me who had ideas and who were executing them. And I remember sort of being so nervous. I was shaking throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And finished at the end, and the room kind of had a weird silence. And in that second, I looked around and there were people crying. And I was like, oh my goodness.
What have I done?
I wanted to run off the stage. And I was like, what have I done, essentially?
Yeah.
And turns out, I came off the stage and people were clapping, and then there was a line of people wanting to just say, great story, or just love what you're doing, or touch them in some way, or the idea of the scent, or they had played with the product prior to entering, or the quality, or the expectation versus the actual product, or the fact that it works, or they've come across the product before but didn't know it was associated to anyone or me in that way. And so I think that was very formative, I think. And in that moment, I realized that I had a voice and I had a story.
Yes.
And there was something special about what I was doing.
Okay, so Zeze, you're in London.
Mm-hmm.
You have established a platform and foundation in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
What brings you back here, and how is the landscape for Malèe Natural Science in London?
I think what brings me back is growth.
Right.
I was lucky enough in 2013 actually, to have some executive MBA students from ESA come in and have a look at my business, the potential size of it, what I could do,
Right.
and how I scale essentially. So how I'm able to take sort of concept idea, one store supplying a few hotels to large
Yep.
global brand,
Yep.
because that was always a goal. I built the business with the goal of being able to have a scalable business. I think lots of businesses from Africa unfortunately struggle with scaling.
Right.
And I wanted to be able to scale. So from day one, I built a scalable business, or worked towards building a scalable
And how have you
business.
found that, the theory meeting the practical, especially when it comes to taking your product and finding the right matches for it? As in, where does the Malèe natural science product fit?
So I think I didn't start off ever thinking Malèe or thinking of Malèe as a small business, so large
Right.
business rules don't apply. I think one of the earlier articles that, if you typed in my name would come up, or Malèe's name in Google, was a WePro article, and it was
Right.
about sort of trademarking and copywriting,
Yes.
and what the value was in doing that for a small business. And I think, that was one of the first things I did with Malèe, the name, and what we were trying to do. Not because, I had lots of cash to burn,
Yeah.
but purely because if I'm building a scalable business and the name is part of my identity and what the brand is about, I think, there has to be some level of protection. So I think in practicality, bridging the gap in sort of knowledge from starting a business to wanting to become an established brand, as it were, that functions in different markets, takes time and has you need to be a bit patient. And I think there is value in the time that it takes to kind of bridge the gap. But I think, in a way, when I first started, I had an impression of what big businesses did.
Yes.
So I just did what they did with my shoestring budget. But I tried to emulate what it was that I felt would be sort of, I guess, organizationally, what that back end of a business needs to look like. And
Yes.
till today, with a small team, I run my business like an organization. I think, the most personal part about it is we're a small team and we all get along and we have a good working environment and everyone gets stuck in. But outside of that, I think the day-to-day about the business and what we do is very much built to scale. So everyone in their role knows that, you need to function in a particular way because there will be room for growth. So,
Yeah.
and I think the same applies across the board.
Can you show us some of these products? I'd like to know, especially what's in Harvey Nicks, and especially for people following this in the UK
Okay.
and online.
Okay.
What two products could you show us that would be pretty interesting?
So I think we have in Harvey Nichols, this is our most recent product, and there's 3 candles, and it's a limited edition collection, and we collaborated with an amazing illustrator, and I wanted to bring the African masquerade to life in some way. And this was us sort of bringing the African masquerade to life. So I think our packaging is all very sort of descriptive of where we're from, or our heritage is very a focal point, but I think in application it's eye-catching and beautiful. And they're 100% soy candles, so they burn into oils that you can moisturize or massage with.
Wow.
They burn at room temperature, so you get about 50 hours. And I think it makes for a beautiful gift. It makes for a lovely thing in your home because it has an amazing scent throw off, without sort of talking about scent throw off and being too technical. And I think for each product, it's important for me that not only does the product tell a story, but also it works. So
this is limited edition.
This is a limited edition, so it comes in 3 other fragrances. This is Polyanthus, and it's inspired by night flowers. So in Africa, mostly night flowers are our thing. We ended up with the coloring because the jacaranda tree in South Africa, it's especially in Johannesburg, is huge. So if you Google Johannesburg at particular times in the month, it looks like the city is purple. And the jacaranda tree is quite fragrant at night. So the inspiration behind polyanthus, which in Latin means many flowers, is that. So it's got gardenia, tuberose, anjou pear, lotus flower, vanilla, some blonde woods. And everything for me needs to be sort of olfactory, sensory. So we've got texture on the products. We've got tribal markings on our product. So for each of the tribes, our logo is actually an Edunkraheni symbol from Ghana, and it means the primary keeper of secrets. And try to just bring in sort of heritage and thought through what we do. So this is the sort of regular edition of this candle, but in a different fragrance called Vidya. And that's inspired by going out into the bush at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. before you go out on a safari game drive where it's still quite moist. The leaves, ground is moist, but everything just is invigorating, fresh. In that moment, you kind of feel connected. Pretty much this is, I guess, our scrub, which is one of our best sellers and has won several awards in the UK and in South Africa. It's 100% salt and sugar, and it has 5 oils and butters. So as you exfoliate, it also sort of nourishes and moisturizes at the same time. We have a whole host of products, so you can find us at maleeonline.com. That's MAEE online.com. And on social at Malèe Online.
Brilliant. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to pester you to make this happen as well.
It's my pleasure, honestly.
And we look forward to sharing more. Thank you for taking two.